You are. Hi, Sami.
How are
Oh,
you?
so good to meet you. You know, it's different meeting somebody, even on a video. I mean, it's way different in person, which is always the best, but this is great. A long time. And then I came back down to the lower 48 because I'm like, you know, and how that kind of guilt gets you. It's like, oh, I'm not around my grandkids. I need to be down here more. So I took a full-time job in internal medicine, and it was awful. You know, same thing. I couldn't really make any extra money either because I was working Monday through Friday. And then what do you do? Like, you might be able to sneak in a shift on the weekend somewhere, maybe,
Right.
you know, but
You
it was just,
literally
you're boxed in. You're boxed in every single way. And I think that, I mean, I hear that from providers all the time. You know, this affords them a lot more freedom and, you know, balance in their lives, and they can work when they need to and not when they need to.
Well, I can prioritize family and family commitments much easier. And I understand that, you know, I don't have any kids. It's still important to me to take care of my family and my mom and my dad and my sister, who is sacrificing her life to help take care of them.
Sure.
And that we're all working together to have a good, decent life, you know, and because I can work till the day I die if I want to, but I'm not going to have my parents around. My mother's 88. My dad is 86. He's going to be 87 this August. And, you know, they've you know, they're on borrowed time now. And it's working locums and in austere places is I like because it's exciting. I get to see different parts of the world that I would have never been able to see before. I get to work with a group of people I've never been exposed to, and I've traveled all over the world, but I love that. It's learning about different cultures and you're kind of put in a small group, and it's a small family type thing because everybody knows everybody, and it's a different culture, and it's different ways to do things and how they look at elders and Alaska, and it's fascinating, and you feel like you're part of the community and that you're an integral part instead of me. You know, I used to work in LA where I was seeing 75 patients a 12-hour shift, and it was like rapid medical assessment plus my own patients plus you know street and treat, you know, easy stuff, and I was exhausted. And then you work 3 on 2 off, 2 on 3 off, or whatever it was, and day shifts, night shifts. And then on your days off, you were exhausted, and you still had to do your housework, and you still had to go to the grocery store, and you still had to cook, and you weren't able to, I wasn't able to, you know, in a lot of ways be the healthiest because I was just constantly trying to catch up on sleep. And after, you know, 20 years of that, I'm done. I never want to go back to that. I'd rather, you know that you're of use, you know, and especially in Alaska with the villages, it's very remote, but they're very grateful that you're there because they know that we are aside of the health aides, and the health aides do amazing jobs, but they live now, and it's like any help, they are so grateful. And it's just fun to be a part of the community, you know.
I love that. I love that. I was a part of the, my first job in Alaska was out in Tanana, out on the Yukon River. And I was out there for 5 years, and it was just, you know, we became like family. You know every single person's voice. Nobody had to identify themselves when they called on the phone because I knew everybody's voice in the village. You know what I mean? That kind of closeness, and it's just it's hard to find. You know,
it is, and they've got the entire village phone numbers on the wall on one piece of paper. I'm like, wow,
like you said, on one piece of paper. Yes,
it's the entire family and the family. It's amazing, and it's, you know. And I'm farther away, but I'm closer to my family because I come home. I can say, hey, I want to work a month on. I want to take a month off. I want to work a month on. Or I can work, you know, 10 days on or 3 weeks, and I can schedule it around. And, you know, it's you know, different. It's been great.
That's so good.
You know?
How did you find out about wilderness? I'm always curious about that.
I was in Afghanistan, and I was working in Afghanistan for a contracting company, and I was head of medical for a company there that oversaw all the static guards and that company. And there was another company that was there, and they had a PA, Rich, and Rich was the one that told me. He goes, Sam, you would love it in Alaska. You've got to get onto wilderness medical. And I'd never heard of you. And
was
I
it
was
Rich
like,
Combs?
Yeah. Yeah, it was. And he was like saying, you've got to go out there. It's great. These people are so grateful. It's so easy, and you're really part of the community. And, he's like, you'd love it. And so, and I was in Afghanistan, and this was my first time contracting and being away. And I was just enthralled with doing medicine differently. And I was like, this is what I was built for. This is what I was made for. And then, of course, I was there at the fall of Afghanistan. I was on the last flight out. And then another company in Iraq picked me up. And so I went to Iraq, and I was there. And I was like, and those years just really solidified that this is what I want to do. I want to contract. And so when my mom started getting a little worse, I wanted to look at something in the United States. So instead of taking, being 3 days to 5 days to get home from Afghanistan or Iraq or anywhere overseas, it would be a lot closer. And so I applied in January of 2025. And then my first rotation, I think, was in May. And I loved it. I've been with you guys. And it was so funny because I was like, okay, I'll do 3 rotations, because it's a lot of training on their end, which I get. And I was like, okay, I'll do 3
eventually.
Yeah, and I was like, I'll do 3, and here I am, like a year later. I'm like, oh, I want to go see this village. Oh, I want to do this, and I've just gotten really comfortable with that, and I can go home, and yeah, that's how I found out about you guys. And
that's great. That's great.
Yeah, and then of course I met you online, and we're like, we both lived in Montana, and I was like, oh my god. In fact, my good friend Elizabeth Shank, she just signed on. I just spoke with her this morning, and she's like, so what do I need to know? What do I need to bring? And I was like, oh, I'm so excited. Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, she'll love it out there. That's kind of my neck of the woods out there too, where I was. So, great. So what, tell me about, I've got these questions here. Let's just tell me about some of your experiences with onboarding with Wilderness and the process. I know it can be arduous and a lot, as far as that goes, but we try to, we vet providers so that we end up with people like you,
Thank you. So it was the onboarding actually with you guys was pretty easy. I did most of my onboarding when I was in Iraq. The hard part, and it wasn't necessarily hard, but it was more arduous, is I had to hard mail my application to Alaska and to the State Board of Alaska. So then I had to have somebody and I'll never forget this, I was in Iraq and a friend of mine was leaving for PTO, and I go, hey, you going home on PTO? And he goes, yeah. And I go, I need you to put this in the mail for me. Because I didn't know it would get there. Yeah. I didn't know how long it would take. Sometimes it takes a month to get mail. And he was like, and I go, just put it in the mail. And he goes, okay. So he went and he threw it in the mailbox as soon as he got stateside. And then it went to Alaska. And then that took a while. And then for me, there was a confusing part. And to be honest, I'm still a little confused about the DEA, because you have to have the DEA linked to Alaska. And that got a little bit confusing. And once you start working, you have to have 30 days, but the onboarding with you guys has been easy. Any questions that I had, you guys would answer, or if you didn't know them, which you guys knew all the answers, you would find out and then they would get back to me. So the onboarding with you guys, I think it's just state and site dependent, which is it's a lot for any state,
It is. And I think Alaska is one of the more difficult places. At one point in time, it was in 2018, because I sit behind a desk all the time, and they don't consider that practice. So I had to let my license in Alaska go because I just didn't have enough clinical hours. And so when I got it back, it was in like the next year, I think 2019. Oh my goodness. I think it took like 6 months,
It does.
Back and forth and not, getting things in just the way they wanted them or whatever. So it's, once I tell people, once they get that Alaska license, never let it go.
Do not let it lapse.
No.
Do not let your Alaska. I will have that Alaska license until I am absolutely 100% done, because it was, I have to say that was the worst part of it, is getting that, because it took months. And then they have a whole bunch of extra things that they make you do. Like you have to go to this website to sign up to do something. It's with your DEA, and you have to upload and you have to check. And if you don't do it within 30 days, then it's considered a major thing. And so I got a call. And so I did my Alaska license before I got back from Iraq.
Wow.
And I didn't know that. And so they sent me an email that I didn't get. And then I started working in Alaska, and they were like, you are in violation. And I just went, what? And I had to write a letter. If I'm sorry, I was in Iraq, please excuse my lateness. I didn't have internet, and we were getting incoming, and I'm in charge of the entire embassy healthcare clinic with the ambassador. And it's like, and 14 people that was a little stressful, and that was the hardest part. The onboarding with you guys is easy as pie. Getting my Montana license was easy as pie.
Good.
I mean, I just signed up, sent my stuff.
It's easy.
Yeah. And so, and I can't wait to work there on a couple of rotations, and, and it's like, so yeah, it's once you get your license in Alaska though, man, I think it takes a bit.
Yeah,
but it's worth it. It's totally worth it. Alaska's worth it. I can't wait to start working in the Yukon, and I want to see the Andalusians and.
Oh yeah. I've never worked on the Aleutians. I've never worked out there either. I've worked in a lot of different places. I've worked interior, Tanana, Fort Yukon, Southeast, Hoona, a bunch of different places, but I've never done the Aleutians, and I would like to do that myself too. So I know that you're purpose driven. So tell us a little bit about how wilderness fits that sense of purpose and that with the satisfaction, that you get in your career.
So I love providing medicine in small communities and being an integral part of that. I don't like being a cog in a gigantic wheel of engine like a lot of the hospitals are in the lower 48. I like being able to provide good quality, meaningful healthcare, and being able to sit and take time with people and having them and being more like a one-on-one thing. And you can do that in Alaska, and working with wilderness in these Alaskan tribal areas really allows me to do that. Like, I walk down the road and everybody's like, hey, Sam. And the kids come up to me and they're like, will you come to the playground with me? And I'm like, sure. And so I played with the kids all day, and they all know me. And so when they come in and see me, they're not terrified. They trust me, and there's a lot of, pretty complicated illnesses and things that you have to, have continual health care for. And I can provide that. And I can provide, hey, make sure your mom comes in, or make sure your kid comes in. Let me explain this. One of the villages, we had a seizure patient, and the kid was 18, and he was very angry about his situation. And I was able to talk to his father, who was very against in the beginning seizure medicine. And so I sat down with him, and I'm sure other providers did too, because we're all kind of the same when we go out there. And I sat with him and I talked with him for a good 45 minutes. And I explained slowly and clearly in terms that they would understand why it's important for him to be on the medication. And by the end of it, his dad goes, huh, and maybe it was just that moment that was the tipping point, because he's heard it before. He just didn't believe, trust, or want to believe. But he goes, you know what? Thanks for your time. He goes, now I understand. And they put him on a seizure medicine. And the entire 3 weeks I was there, he never had a repeat seizure. And one of the health aides was like, wow, he never listens to anybody. And so that was very fulfilling. Whereas in the lower 48, you don't get that feedback. You don't get that, and I see him on the road when I'm walking in the village, and I'm like, hey, how you doing? And he's like, better. And then he goes on. He's 18, He wants to go hunt and fish. And it's like, yeah, let's do that. But let's make sure you're safe doing it. And so that is what I can do. And it just is very, and it's not overwhelming. I feel invigorated after being there and not drained like the lower 48 did when I was in a major hospital. I was in a major trauma center for years in LA, and it just it ground me down. And then, and I've worked in clinics, and I remember the last patient I worked in a clinic, it was an ortho clinic, and the parents got mad at me for being too chipper because I walked into this room and their 14-year-old or 12-year-old girl had a broken big toe. And I go, hey, good news is your toe's broken, but it doesn't need surgery and it'll heal up in 6 to 8 weeks. And then you can keep running along, but it's going to be a bummer for the summer. And they reported me for being too chipper. And I was like, you know what? I'm good. And I left the job because of it. And that's when I went with, I decided I wanted a contract and have people appreciate me be there.
Yeah.
And that's what, and that's what the working in these remote sites do. And there's such a need. And so it fits my lifestyle and my family. I can care for my family. I can see my family more. I can feel fulfilled in meeting a very integral, important niche in this community. And I get to see new places that I would have never been able to see before. And I get to experience new cultures that I would have never experienced before. And it's just been wonderful on all accounts.
That's so great to hear. We're so appreciative of you. We really are.
Thank you.
And Norton Sound, oh my gosh, same. I mean, they, every place, of course, loves you because you love what you do. And it shows. Right. So tell me a little bit about maybe a time when you had to. I know that the seizure patient was, and thank you for telling me about that. But tell me a little bit about the weather medevacs, times when you've had to, because, it's a factor. And we want providers to know it's not your normal situation where you call a medevac and they're half an hour away. And, it really isn't. I mean, now, you can.
Yeah. So I think it's important to know that, each village is a little bit different. Some villages get weathered in more than others. But for the most part, everybody gets to their village almost always by plane. And so there's two ways that you can medevac a patient. You can medevac a patient commercially where they're stable, they have a broken arm, and they need to go to Nome to get orthopedics to look at it and to get it casted and to get it, evaluated. And so they can go tomorrow. So you splint it up and you're like, okay, I'm going to give you some pain meds. We're going to splint it up and you're going to go tomorrow on the regular commercial flight. So you have to call the hospital and you have to say, I need this patient to be seen by ortho, and you put it into the orders. And then they pick up and their family members leave with them and they go to the hospital, they get their broken arm taken care of. Then you
and these are bush planes.
And these are bush planes,
Yep.
right? There's only 8 to 12 seats on them. You are literally sitting with cargo. I'll send you a bunch of pictures. I'm literally sitting next to my suitcases going, hey,
I've been on it, but I think it's important that people know.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And so it's their bush planes. So they're small. They're one seat on each side of the plane, and it's 12 max, but sometimes they take the seats out to put more cargo. So, and so they fill up pretty quick. So you've got to call, and then they will bump other people who don't necessarily need to be there on a medical emergency, or they can come later. Now, and then you've got the medical supported medical evacs from Anchorage. Now those take 4+ hours to get to wherever you're at, depending on weather. And so then the weather comes in. The weather in Alaska can be tricky because storms can come in at the top of a dime, weather, winds and snows and visibility. And if there's no visibility or the visibility lowers to a certain ceiling, they will not fly the commercial planes. They have a little bit more leeway with the medevacs if it's a serious issue that we need to get people out. They have a little bit broader parameters than the commercial flights, but sometimes they don't and they can't fly in. So then you're sitting on patients and you are doing extended prolonged care. And it may be a day, it may be 2 days, it may be 4 days. And that is when it's, you are really tested to your medical knowledge and abilities, and you have to learn how to delegate, because if it's only you in the clinic, you're doing everything. I mean, you're doing all the blood pressures, you're placing the IV lines, you're, making sure that the IVs and the medicine's titrated, you're administering the meds, you're administrating the tests, you're testing for them, and you're sitting with them, and sometimes it can be long. But you can also delegate and say to family members, hey, can you stay here, can you come get me, I've got to do this test. And usually you will have like a ton of family members in with them, and you can use them, and they understand this because they know where they live, and they are always willing to help. And because they want to make sure their family member is taken care of, which they usually are, but you are in remote areas, and sometimes there's poor outcomes, and there's nothing you can do about it. And the family members want to be there for that too. And so I like incorporating family members in decision making and stuff. But so it can be a little tricky if I have yet to be stuck on a patient like that. And I've been working there for over a year, but I do know providers who've been stuck on them for 3 days because they couldn't get out. And like Diamede, which I'm actually going to in September or August, they are notorious for getting to weathered in. And you may be stuck there for a week. And if you have a critical patient, you may be doing house calls every day, they may be in the clinic, and you have to adjust. And I think the biggest trait a provider will be successful in these areas if they can think on their feet, and if they can, make mountains out of molehills, and not in a bad way. If you can look and you can adjust and you can think on your feet, and you can say, okay, this is what I have. I'm limited in my resources, but I can do this. You'll do very well there. And the providers who are used to having everything handed to them and doing things and having a nurse or a medic or MA to do things, it will be a little bigger learning curve, because you have to be like, well, I've never done this, I guess I'm going to do this. Like I had an 86-year-old elder who had severe abdominal pain, and she was pale and she was vomiting like crazy. And, it was 11 at night. I had like, I don't know, 8 family members in there. And she happened to be the mother of one of the health aides. And I was like, I got, decision making. Is this a surgical abdomen, or is this not a surgical abdomen? And I looked and I was like, well, we got an x-ray machine. I don't know how to take x-rays. I've had plenty taken, but I don't know how to do it. So I went over and I figured out that the combination was really simple, because I was like, it's got to be simple, 1, 2, 3, 4, but I couldn't figure out how to move it into the patient's room. And I called, and so I was like, well, and I go, we can't move the x-ray. I found out later all I had to do was unplug it, but I didn't know. And so I was like, forget it. Let's move the patient to the x-ray in the hallway. And so I grabbed the gurney. We had family members help, and we moved the patient into the hallway where the x-ray machine was parked. And I turned it over and I took a picture, and I actually had the board upside down, so it looked like she ate like a 3x3 electrical board. And I said, well, I guess we're flipping this over. So we flipped it over, and I got an x-ray, and it wasn't a small bowel obstruction. So I was like, this is probably cholelithiasis. So let's give you some Toradol. We're still going to medevac you. But, and I made her comfortable, and she was like, oh, I feel so much better. But it's stuff like that. You got to think on your feet, and then the next day we were able to, we were able to get her out, and I gave all the family members the call phone. And I said, if she gets worse, come, call me and I will come to your house. I left the IV in because that was easier, because she was a hard stick. So you have to adjust to your circumstances. Yeah. And, and then she got on the plane. We discontinued her IV. We got her on the commercial plane the next day. She was comfortable. She had a family member. She flew to Nome, and then they were like, yep, she needs to have her gallbladder out. And they flew her then from Nome to Anchorage. That's so awesome. You have to think on your feet.
Yes, yes. So if you were to talk to someone who just a new grad, let's say, but they wanted to do this kind of work, tell me what you would suggest that they do to prepare themselves.
Oh, okay. You may not like this answer.
Oh, I bet I will.
I don't know. I tell every new grad this. I've been a PA for 24 years. I have my majority of my experience is emergency medicine and trauma surgery. And then I moonlit in upper extremity hand, orthopedics, and my initial was primary care. I tell every single new grad this. You need to do primary care for at least 3 years because you need to see 1,000 normals. So all you have to do is look at someone and go, I don't know what's wrong with you, but there's something wrong with you. You need to see 1,000 normals. You also need to be able to say, okay, because you know, oh, you've got new onset diabetes. Let me get you metformin. And then if they come back and it doesn't work, okay, let me increase the metformin. And then they come back and it's still not working. Okay, it's in the emergency room. We see people, we discharge people, go see your primary care. So we've got a very narrow scope. If this doesn't work, you need to go to your primary care and follow up. Well, guess what? We are now your primary care. We have to figure out why your medication's not working. We have to figure out labs. And so I always suggest to start with primary care. You can always moonlight in emergency medicine, but start with primary care because seeing 1,000 normals, you won't miss something. Because I literally can now take a look at somebody, glance, and I know, I usually know what's going on with them. It's a curse. You will be cursed with this for the rest of your life. You look and go, huh, they got a knee issue. Ooh, you know, and I had a 14-year-old girl walk in, slumped over, and I go, she's got a ruptured appy. She was on her way to walk down and sit down. And I'm like, no, we're going to send you right in the back and we're going to get you started because you have a ruptured appy. And she did. And it's because of seeing 1,000 normals and being able to handle day-to-day medication and blood pressure medications and what first, second line, third line, when to send them because what you're doing isn't doing, when not to send them. And that is honestly, everybody should have at least 3 to 5 years of primary care.
Great.
And then moonlight
Great
other
advice.
things.
Great advice. How about emergency care? How much, you know, I've got my own ideas on this, but tell me what you think about that. What do you think would prepare somebody for what you do, where you are? I mean, you're working in a very, very austere environment and without, you know.
Yeah, emergency medicine, I think I'm an emergency medicine provider. So you can look up when to give kids their vaccinations. If you're like, hey, I haven't done this since school, you can look up when you can give kids vaccination. You can look up a well baby exam. You can look up, you know what I mean? But getting the skills of, you know, we don't intubate a lot there, but we've had to manage airways. And I lean more towards having providers have emergency medicine experience because emergency medicine is where when somebody's in a medical emergency, they could die. They're not really going to die with a broken toe. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of my feeling on it. And I think getting emergency skills, doing emergency skills, keeping up on emergency skills is really the scariest, where a lot of the providers, they go, you know, and yeah, you know, a lot of people, you know, not to tout me on horn, but a lot of people are like, I am so glad you're here, because they get nervous doing emergency because they've only done OB and they were midwives, and they're like, hey, can you help me do this? And I'm like, absolutely. And that's the other thing I like, is not to digress, but I like going up into the clinics and helping different providers become better at things that I'm good at by teaching, and also having them teach me stuff. And so like one of the clinics I was at, one of the providers, he was a great guy, super good at what he does, but he's like, hey, Sam, can you help me with splinting? It's been a very long time and I focus on other things and I really didn't get a good, and I was like, sure. And so I thought I was going to give just, hey, basic splinting skills and this and that and the other. And like 10 people showed up. And so we ended up using materials. We had a big splinting class and everybody had a good time. And then the health aides, even the guy who cleans the place helped, because he can sometimes be your hands if you're the only one there. And if I call for something, I want him to know it. And so had a big splinting clinic and they learned a lot. And then when one of the providers she was a midwife for 13 years and then became a nurse practitioner, and we had an OB patient, I go, hey, can you take me in and review this? Because I delivered 9 babies. Yes, but that was years ago. And I want a refresher. And she's like, absolutely. So it's a teamwork. And there's so many providers with different specialties and skills. And so sorry, that's my dad's phone. And so we all help each other out, because I've always lived by, when this ocean rises, we all rise. And I live by that. And so it's not just, hey, I'm the emergency care provider and you need to listen and do what I say. Because if you have that mentality, you will not do well.
Yeah.
You cannot be in there going, I'm going to dictate you how this goes, because
Those are such wonderful pearls of wisdom for us to take away from this talk. Anything else that you'd like to say, either about working with wilderness or things we could do better? Or we've got our ears open for that, because we know that it's a constant process of improvement.
Sure. Everything is.
Yeah, sure.
A couple things I would say to improve is help with that stupid DEA or whatever that secondary site is, because somebody mentioned it and then it was lost on me, and I got my knickers in a little bit of a twist and I got into a little bit of trouble. So that would help to follow through from beginning to end of everything we need to do, because I know I was super busy with Iraq, and that helps, being maybe a little more hands-on, making sure that everything is done in the process, not to just be like, oh, by the way, you need to do this, don't forget in 30 days, because I remember somebody mentioned that and then it just got lost. That would be, I think, an improvement. Also, that maybe sitting down with the providers and saying, hey, what is it you're looking for? Are you looking to stay in one place? Do you like having consistency and going to one place? Or, hey, do you want to see other things? And what types of things do you want to see, so that you can help us like manage our schedule, because you guys know the sites better than we do. So sure. I'm kind of like, hey, I want to see another part of Alaska. Okay, well, Sam, this is great. And not just sending down like a piece of paper, but being like, hey, we've got this opportunity. Maybe next, in June, you might be able to fit in it, instead of me having to go onto your, you know what I mean? Kind of working with me, saying, hey, I really like that suggestion, because there is a bit of a split there. There are people who want to, there is. Experience new places and not just be, and there are people who definitely want to know, this is my village. I want to go back every single time to my rotations. Excuse me. And I want to, I want that consistency. So I took a note on that. I mean, I think that's a great point, just to discover like who's who on that. Do you want to move around? Yeah. Do you want to, is that your preference? And we do as well as we can, of course, with, making things happen. But, or do you, or are they more of a stay in the same village type person? Right. Yeah. Or at least stay in the same healthcare system. And and I've noticed traveling, there are a lot of people who are like, no, I just want to stay in Norton Sound. It's what I know. I know what I'm getting into. I know what I'm doing. If I go anyplace else and I don't know what I'm getting into, and they want to stay there. Whereas I want to see Montana. I want to see, and getting to know me personally and what I like, what I dislike, knowing my family and having one point contact that knows me, knows my situation with my parents, and says, hey, look, we've got this great place in Montana we think you'd really get into. But here's a caveat is, so we're not going to book you out for a year at Norton Sound because you said you wanted, and that's one of the things that happened is is I was talking to someone and they're like, well, what are you looking at giving? And I'm like, well, I'm kind of looking at giving a month on, month off. And I was talking to you guys as Wilderness Medical and
Yeah.
put me around to anywhere you want that you think I'll fit. And they took it as only Norton Sound. So they
Sure.
did a contract for a year, Norton Sound. And I go, whoa, 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 whoa. I was just kind of talking off my head as to what I might be able to give you as Wilderness, because I look at working for you. And oh, okay. And then we had to cancel and I said, no, I want to be asked before. I will tell you when I can go, and then you can put me there. And I've been placed at Norton Sound the most time, which I don't mind because it's great money. But there is, once I get to place of more stability, I want to be able to move around and see other things. So I think getting to know people, and if they want to stop and stay, and then checking in, how do you like this? Are you interested in other things? Do you like Norton Sound? How is it working for you? How, and having somebody check in after your first month or two or rotation or whatever. How did you like it? Is this something that you may want to consider keeping on doing, or after you do the 3 that Norton Sound requests, and just checking in, because people will know after they do this, this really isn't for me, or yeah, I kind of like it, or you know what, I like it, but I want to see other things.
This has been so valuable. I can't tell you. I mean, we don't know we don't know these things unless we ask, right? And I just can't thank you enough. Is there anything else that you want to give to me before we?
I would also, when you denote where you want to work, how do you ask them? And because somebody said this to me in Norton Sound, they said, at some point in time, people will first chase the money, right? Because they want to get up on bills and stuff like that. But then after a while, she said, and I think this would be a very good question for your recruitment team and the people you work with, ask is, do you want to chase the money or do you want to chase the experience? And that is a question. I took a step back and I went, wow, that is exactly the question. After I get stable in where I'm going, it's like, that is exactly what I want to do. Is once I get stable, once I get stuff together, and then it's clockwork hits, I want to chase the experience. And so that's a question. And other people, their situation is different. They may be like, look, I have to chase the money and I need to be with the highest paid with the shortest amount of time. This is what I want. And then it's going to be easy for you, because then you guys can say, okay, well, Norton Sound pays the most, or this pays close, or this pays whatever, and really break down what the provider needs. Is it the money or the experience? Is it the, do you want to change more, or do you want to change less?
Consistency? Yes. I think those are some real pearls that we can take away from this, and that we'll be sharing with our recruitment team, because that's where, when people first come in the door, that's when you really want to ask those questions. Do you want more consistency? Do you want change? Do you want the higher paying jobs? And some people come in the door and they'll, they haven't worked for a month or two, so they need to catch up, whatever, like you said, catch up on their bills, whatever. So I think that, I think those are some really, very thoughtful, good, questions that we can.
Yeah, I think it would help, because I've never done locums, and so I had no idea. I had no idea what to expect. Of course, I was like, dude, it's got to be the money. I haven't worked in several months. It's got to be the money. And then that helped. And then also, and now it's coming down to, okay, now that I'm kind of caught up and I've got except for this disaster, I can kind of manage it, and that helped me a lot. And I think also having new providers come in, things were a little vague, because I think I can understand why, some people don't want to talk about like the living situation in different clinics, and it's not really stressed upon, because you don't want to scare providers from going, but and you might get providers who are like, oh yeah, I'm into this, but wait a minute, I have to sleep on the floor on a mattress? No way. And then they might back out. But you know what? You don't want them there in the first place
if they don't. I think that is
if they are absolutely unaware that this is what they could potentially be living in. Because if they get there and they're like, oh my God, no effing way. And then they book, you've just put a bunch of money into somebody doing training.
Yes.
And they have all these expectations, and then they go and they're like, wow, I'm sleeping on a floor in a storeroom. And
Yes.
I mean, I will send you pictures of where I stay, and it's okay with me because it's like, well, whatever, you know. But people need to know that.
Yes.
Before...
We've tried to be, especially lately, very intentional about giving all the details. You know, this is what it is. This is where you'll be staying. This is where you'll be sleeping. And I, by the way, with the pictures, I would like to see those, because those are all part of our, you know, program to let people know, like this is it. This is where, and because sometimes when you explain something, you know, a picture is 1,000 words, as you know.
And
so
that's the other thing, is if you are like, hey, we're thinking about sending you to this, because each village is different. They have different store abilities. They have different kitchens. They have different sleeping arrangements. And if you were like, hey, who's out there? Can you take a quick snapshot of the kitchen facilities? Because I ended up taking 80 pounds worth of kitchen stuff because I had no idea what I could cook. And then I get there and I'm like, wow, this is a full kitchen. This was a waste. You see what I mean? So if you had pictures and you're like, hey, you're going to go to Stebbins. This is what the provider housing looks like. You may or may not be in it, depending on the thing, but this is the kitchen at this is the kitchen in the clinic. This is where you may be sleeping. This is where you may, and then putting it together as a file where people can read.
Absolutely.
And then they can do pictures and go, okay, that looks like a full kitchen. I don't need to take as much. Whereas Gullivan has the smallest kitchen, almost nothing in it, and it's really hard to cook. And they have barely a store. You see what I mean? And then Teller is the same way. So it's like, you really need to have pictures of all the facilities of each village and where they're staying, so people are prepared. Because I think people can handle things, but it's like, you know,
or they can choose, you know, not to go there too.
Right,
we have plenty of other places. You know, we have plenty of work available. So I agree with you. And I think that the pictures, I know that we have some, we don't have all, but certainly we can get all. We have providers in each one of those villages.
Right.
So we will. That's great. Thank you. Thanks for that.
Yeah, and they need to take pictures of the stores and show what's on the shelf, because each store is different. Like Nome is great. Gamble is great. They've got a big AS store, right? Or what is it? That big store. They've got a big store there.
Yeah.
An AC store.
Yeah.
They've got a big AC store. Mm-hmm. So you don't really need it. St. Michael's has a big AC store. So you can technically, if you can, go from Stebbins to St. Michael's. So you don't need to bring so much. But Teller and Koyuk and Gullivan, you need to take a lot. In Diomede, you need to take a lot of food. So each one of those things, I think you need to break down each village. So it's not only written, but you get a visual.
But you get a visual as well.
What I take and what I don't.
I completely agree with you. That is just, thank you. Whew.
And do it with your other sites like the Yukon and wherever.
Oh, sure.
Because
absolutely.
I want to go to the Yukon, but I'm like, dude, I know Norton Sound. I know what I need to take. I'm like, do I really want to get into something else when I already know what I need to take? You know what I mean? And so therefore, I think people will be more willing to move other places if they do want to experience other things, because it's like, oh, wow, okay, this is housing. This is it. Because I'm very visual. Somebody could tell me everything, and it's like, that means nothing to me. Do I take a twin or a single bed sheet?
Yeah.
A fitted bed sheet. Do I take a single or a twin? Do I take a single or a queen? Do I need my sleeping bag, or do they have sheets? Do they have towels? All this makes a difference because everything is weight. Do I need to bring a ton of food, or can I get it at the AC store? Is there AC? And that's the visual stuff will be so much better, and people will feel more comfortable going in on it. So that's,
And like you said, it's weight too. I mean, you can't, take an extra 50 pounds worth of something if it's not absolutely necessary. I mean, it's just, it costs a lot to get stuff out there, and it's just a pain as well to transfer all that stuff from one, commercial flight, the Alaska Air, over to the, housing, to the bush flight, all that. So great, great suggestions.
I have one more suggestion too.
I'm sure. Go ahead.
I know we're running late, but maybe give a suggested packing list, because one of the providers was brand new and she brought 2 gigantic suitcases filled with jeans. They're heavy and you don't ever wear them. Filled with 5 and 6 sweatshirts. There's a washer and dryer. You just go through 2. Maybe 3. Yeah. So it's like I had to pare down all my clothes. And if I would have had a suggested packing list, that would have been a lot easier. Because now I have 1 suitcase filled with gear. I have 1 suitcase filled with clothes. And then if I take a 3rd suitcase, it's filled with food or cooking things that I can't get there. And that is my thing. So a packing list.
I was thinking we had one on the website that I'll have to check on that. I'm not sure.
Even on the website, if you get a new recruit, I would be like, here it is. Here are the villages we're thinking of you sending. These are the packing lists of what we think you should say. Because some of the villages, their washer and dryer doesn't really work. Or some of the villages, you need laundry detergent to bring laundry detergent because they don't have enough. And some, they have everything because it's not a big deal. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. This has been a wealth of information and a wealth of wonderful clips. We're going to use some of these clips on YouTube. Some of them will be just, using with our recruiting department. Some of them will be using with staffing. So, okay.
Thank you so very much, Mary Ellen.
Thank you for your time. Thanks so much.
And thank you for everything.
Thank you. Okay. Bye. Take care. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.